Welcome to Daily Dose of Stoicism. Before we begin, support the channel by subscribing and sharing this video. Now, let's begin. Listen carefully. What I'm about to say might quietly dismantle everything you think you know about female love, because most men believe love looks loud, messages, attention, constant reassurance. They think when a woman truly loves them, she leans in harder, talks more, explains more, chases more. But that belief is exactly why so many men lose the woman who loved them the deepest. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never tell you: the deeper a woman falls, the quieter her love becomes. And here's where it gets dangerous. Some of the strongest signs of a woman's emotional attachment look exactly like disinterest. Distance. Even withdrawal. There is one behavior, and I'll reveal it later, that makes men panic, overreact, accuse, or pull away, when in reality, it's the clearest proof she has emotionally bonded to you at the deepest level. And when men misunderstand it, they don't just damage attraction, they permanently fracture the emotional safety that made her fall in the first place. Psychological research consistently shows that men misinterpret female attachment patterns more than any other relational signal, not because men are stupid, but because female love does not operate on male logic. So if you've ever thought, she used to talk more, she seems calmer, colder, she's not chasing like before, maybe she's losing interest, what I'm about to explain may completely reframe your past, your present, and your future relationships. These are 7 behaviors that only appear when a woman is experiencing deep emotional bonding, not curiosity, not attraction, not infatuation. This is the kind of love that alters how her nervous system processes reality. And if you miss these signs, you won't just feel confused, you may unknowingly push away the woman who loved you more deeply than anyone ever has. Sign number 1, she lets you see her unfiltered reality, but becomes silent about one specific thing. At first, this looks simple: she stops performing, she lets you see her without polish, messy hair, old clothes, no makeup, emotional exhaustion, frustration, tears, irritation, complaints she would never share publicly. She doesn't try to impress you anymore. Most men think, she's just comfortable. But comfort isn't the real signal. The real signal is what she chooses to show, and what she deliberately erases from conversation. When a woman enters deep emotional attachment, she practices something psychologists call selective vulnerability. She exposes her human flaws, but quietly removes romantic alternatives from her mental world. Here's what that means in real life: she stops mentioning men who flirt with her, she doesn't talk about attention she receives, she avoids referencing exes, she doesn't test your jealousy, she doesn't provoke insecurity, not because she's hiding something, but because other men stop registering as relevant. Neurologically, when emotional attachment deepens, the brain suppresses attention toward alternative mates, her mind narrows focus, you become the emotional reference point. And here's where men sabotage themselves. Men assume silence equals secrecy, they assume absence of information equals deception, so they interrogate, they question, they get suspicious, when in reality, her silence is loyalty in its purest form. If she's willing to look imperfect in front of you, emotionally messy, unattractive, vulnerable, but never brings other men into the picture, that means she's emotionally placed you at the center of her internal world. She's not shopping, she's nesting. And most men don't realize they've already won, because they're too busy guarding against a threat that no longer exists. Sign number 2, she defends you where you're not present, even when she's upset with you. This is one of the most invisible expressions of female love, and almost no man ever witnesses it directly. When a woman is deeply attached to you, your reputation becomes personal territory, not publicly dramatic, not loudly announced, but quietly guarded, behind closed doors, in conversations you will never hear. Here's what that looks like: her friends criticize you, she redirects the conversation. Her family questions your choices, she contextualizes them. Coworkers joke at your expense, she shuts it down, even when she's frustrated with you, even when she disagrees privately. Even when you're not perfect. This isn't blind loyalty, this is emotional identification. Psychologists call this protective alignment. When a partner subconsciously experiences attacks on you as attacks on the emotional bond itself, she may argue with you in private, but in public, you're her person. And here's the test men never notice: pay attention to how people talk about you when she's in the room. If conversations suddenly become more respectful, more cautious, more measured, that's not coincidence, that's conditioning. She set boundaries without announcing them, and the moment she stops doing this, the moment she allows disrespect to go unchecked. That's not emotional maturity, that's emotional detachment. Love doesn't disappear loudly, it dissolves quietly, first in private defenses, then in emotional withdrawal. Sign number 3, she remembers what you forgot, and tracks patterns you didn't know you had. This is where it becomes unsettling for men. You mention something casually, once, and weeks, sometimes months, later, she references it like it mattered. A childhood memory, a complaint about work, a dream you abandoned, a fear you never explored, you didn't emphasize it, but she archived it. This isn't effort, it's neurological prioritization. When emotional bonding deepens, the brain flags information related to the attachment figure as high relevance. You become her internal narrative anchor. She's not just remembering facts, she's mapping you, your moods, your triggers, your stress responses, your avoidance patterns, your confidence fluctuations. And here's where men get uncomfortable, because eventually, she connects dots you didn't know were connected. She references things you said months ago, she points out emotional cycles you haven't noticed, she remembers promises you casually made, and forgot. Men think, she's holding things against me. No, she's holding you close enough to study. This level of attention doesn't happen without emotional investment. Indifference forgets, attachment observes, and yes, the same memory that nurtures intimacy can later expose inconsistency, but that's not manipulation, that's involvement. The opposite of love isn't anger, it's inattention. Why men panic right here? At this stage, most men begin to feel pressure, they feel seen, tracked, known, and instead of leaning into grounded leadership, they withdraw, they shut down. They accuse her of overthinking, they create emotional distance to regain control, and that reaction plants the first seed of insecurity, not because she wanted control, but because she invested more emotionally than you realized. And now, we reach the sign that destroys more relationships than cheating ever could. The sign that looks like loss of attraction, but is actually emotional depth reaching a critical threshold. Sign number 4, she becomes comfortable with silence, but her body never leaves you. This is the sign that destroys more relationships than betrayal ever could, because when men see this shift, they panic, the conversations slow down, the constant texting fades, the energy becomes calm, grounded, quiet, and men assume the worst. She's bored. She's losing interest. She doesn't feel the same anymore. But that assumption is rooted in male insecurity, not female psychology. When a woman is emotionally bonded at a deep level, her nervous system stops performing. She no longer feels the need to entertain the connection. Silence no longer feels threatening, it feels safe. Here's the critical distinction most men miss: disconnection feels cold, emotional security feels quiet. When a woman is deeply attached, she doesn't need constant verbal validation to feel close. She can sit next to you without speaking, she can scroll, read, or simply exist in your presence. She doesn't feel pressure to fill space, but watch closely, because the truth is in her body, not her words. She stays physically close, her body remains open toward you, she mirrors your movements, she relaxes instead of withdrawing. Her silence is not distance, it's trust. Psychologically, this happens when her attachment system feels regulated. Your presence calms her nervous system instead of activating anxiety. And here's where men make the fatal mistake: they interpret silence as rejection, so they interrogate. They demand reassurance, they create emotional noise. That noise tells her one thing: you are not safe to relax with. And the moment a woman no longer feels emotionally safe, she doesn't argue, she detaches. Silence was never the threat, your reaction to it was. Why silence is the highest form of intimacy? Think about this: you only feel pressure to impress someone when you're unsure of your place. Silence means certainty. She knows where she stands with you. She doesn't need to prove anything. She doesn't need to chase. She doesn't need to perform. Men who understand this become grounded. Men who don't sabotage the bond trying to revive something that was never dying. Sign number 5, she starts building her future with you, without announcing it. This one happens quietly. So quietly that men often miss it entirely. She doesn't sit you down and say, "I'm planning my life around you." She doesn't make dramatic declarations. Instead, her decisions begin to shift. She checks your availability before committing to plans. She considers your location when evaluating opportunities. She adjusts timelines subconsciously. She aligns her routines with yours. This is not dependence. This is integration. When a woman is deeply in love, her brain starts calculating shared continuity. Her future no longer exists as a solo project. You are factored in, automatically, and here's the important part, she doesn't ask permission, because emotionally, she already decided. This scares men who equate love with control. They worry she's losing herself, but what's actually happening is bond consolidation. She's weaving you into her long-term emotional structure, and here's the danger zone. If a man reacts by pulling away, if he emphasizes independence too aggressively, if he treats her integration as pressure, her mind receives a devastating message: I invested more than he did. And once that belief forms, she doesn't beg, she slowly unwinds the emotional fabric she built. Sign number 6, the way she argues with you changes, and this is where most men lose her. This sign separates temporary attraction from emotional attachment. When a woman doesn't care deeply, she argues to dominate, she fights to win, she escalates, she doesn't care if the bond fractures, but when she's deeply emotionally attached, conflict becomes careful. She raises issues, not to attack, but to preserve the connection. She chooses words more deliberately, she controls her tone, she pauses instead of exploding, not because she's weak, but because losing you feels dangerous. Here's the paradox: the more she loves you, the more vulnerable conflict becomes for her. She's not fighting to be right, she's fighting to stay close. And this is where men destroy everything. They interpret her emotional expression as criticism, so they shut down, they stonewall, they become dismissive, they threaten emotional withdrawal. That reaction triggers something psychologists call abandonment confirmation bias. Her mind starts asking, if I express needs, does he disappear? If I bring problems, do I become unsafe? If I speak, do I lose him? Once that loop activates, she stops communicating, not because she's calm, but because she's emotionally preparing for detachment. The most dangerous phase of a relationship is not loud arguments, it's quiet emotional resignation, what men should do instead, but rarely do. A grounded man doesn't react defensively, he stays present, he listens without trying to win, he understands that emotional expression is not an attack, it's an invitation to stability. When you respond with calm leadership during conflict, her attachment deepens. When you withdraw, her love slowly collapses inward. Sign number 7, your emotional state starts affecting hers, even when she tries to hide it. This is the final confirmation: when a woman is deeply emotionally bonded to you, emotional contagion activates. Your wins lift her mood, your losses weigh on her, your stress unsettles her nervous system, your peace calms her, not because she's dependent, but because her emotional regulation has synchronized with yours. You succeed, she celebrates harder than you do. You struggle, she feels it even if you say nothing. This is not logical love, this is biological attachment. Your emotional state becomes relevant to her internal balance, and here's the responsibility most men never realize they hold. When a woman reaches this stage, your emotional discipline matters more than words. Your calm becomes safety, your chaos becomes threat. If you're unstable, reactive, inconsistent, she doesn't nag. She absorbs, until she can't, and when she finally disconnects, men are shocked. She changed overnight. No, she detached slowly, quietly, while still loving you. The pattern men miss every time. Look at the pattern across all signs. Love becomes quieter, behavior becomes subtler, emotion becomes deeper, communication becomes more intentional. Men expect escalation, women shift toward stability. And when men don't recognize this shift, they misinterpret peace as boredom. They create tension to feel wanted. They test loyalty that was already given, and in doing so, they destroy what they were afraid of losing. What this means for you right now, if you're seeing these signs: you are not losing her, you are standing at the deepest phase of emotional bonding, and what determines whether she stays, is not what you say, but how grounded you remain when love stops being loud. How men lose her. And how the strongest men never do, the exact moment most men break the bond, and don't realize it, there is a moment in every deep relationship that determines everything. It's not when attraction begins, it's not the honeymoon phase, it's not the first fight, it's the moment her emotional investment surpasses yours. Not in words, in nervous system commitment. That's when love stops being exciting and starts being real. And this is where most men fail. Because instead of rising into emotional leadership, they recoil, they become suspicious, they withdraw to regain control, they test her loyalty, they create distance to feel powerful again, and every one of those reactions sends the same message to her unconscious mind: I invested more than you did, and I'm alone in it. Once that belief takes root, her love doesn't disappear, it collapses inward. Why women don't leave when they're angry, they leave when they're certain. Men think women leave when they're upset, they don't. Women leave when they feel emotionally unsafe to invest further. Here's the progression most men never see. First, she communicates, then she explains, then she tries again, then she goes quiet. That silence is not peace, it's preparation. By the time she stops arguing, she has already started grieving the relationship, and men make the fatal mistake of relaxing at this stage. She's not complaining anymore. Things are calm again. No, things are ending, because emotional withdrawal happens before physical departure, the behavior that triggers irreversible detachment. There is one response that destroys emotional safety faster than anything else, and it's not cheating, it's not lying, it's not even yelling, it's emotional invalidation. When a woman opens up, calmly, vulnerably, and you dismiss her feelings, minimize her concerns, avoid the conversation, or make her feel dramatic, her brain records something dangerous: I cannot rely on him emotionally. Once that realization settles, her attachment system shuts down to protect itself. She doesn't hate you, she detaches to survive. And here's the brutal truth: no amount of logic can fix emotional invalidation, because attachment operates below language. What strong men do differently, and why women stay: strong men don't chase love, they contain it. They don't panic when energy shifts. They don't demand reassurance when silence appears, they don't interpret vulnerability as weakness. They become the emotional anchor. When she's emotional, they stay grounded. When she's quiet, they stay present. When she's uncertain, they stay consistent. This consistency does something profound. It tells her nervous system, I can invest deeper without losing myself. And that safety is what keeps love alive. How to repair damage without begging or chasing. If you're realizing you reacted wrong in the past, understand this: chasing does not rebuild attraction, explaining does not restore safety, apologizing excessively does not reignite attachment. What works is emotional regulation. You rebuild trust by staying calm, respecting space, becoming predictable, leading with presence, not words. When your energy stabilizes, her nervous system notices, and if attachment still exists, she slowly leans back in, not because you asked, but because safety returned. The final truth men need to hear: love does not leave loudly, it fades when emotional leadership disappears. Women don't want perfection, they want grounded presence. They want to feel safe investing deeply without being punished for it, and the men who understand this rarely lose women, because they don't confuse silence with distance. They don't mistake peace for boredom, they don't fear emotional depth, they lead it. If you recognize these signs, if you realized she loved you more deeply than you understood, this video wasn't meant to shame you, it was meant to wake you up, because the men who master emotional stability never have to chase affection, they attract loyalty, they create safety, they become irreplaceable. If this changed how you see relationships, drop a comment and tell me which sign hit you the hardest. And if you want more content on stoicism, emotional control, masculine presence, and psychological attraction, subscribe, because the strongest men are not the loudest, they're the calmest ones in the room.